This video shows you how to use DaVinci Resolve from scratch. You will see how to download it, understand the interface, and set up your first project step by step, exactly like a real editing workflow on screen. By the end, you'll know how to cut and trim clips, add images, text, transitions, and sound effects, improve colors, and export a finished video. No shortcuts, no skipped steps, just a clear start-to-finish guide so you can edit your first video with confidence.
Let's begin by opening your web browser and navigating to the official source. We'll be heading directly to blackmagicdesign.com. And I want to emphasize this point: always download from the official website. Third-party sites may offer modified versions that could contain malware or missing features, so we're sticking with the legitimate source. Once you're on the Blackmagic Design website, scroll down until you locate the DaVinci Resolve free download button. Click it, and you'll be taken to the download section where you'll notice two distinct versions available: DaVinci Resolve and DaVinci Resolve Studio. This is where many users make their first mistake. The Studio version is the premium, paid option that requires a license to function properly. Without that license, you simply cannot use it. The standard DaVinci Resolve is what we're after. It's completely free and includes an impressive array of professional editing tools that rival expensive alternatives. Now, you'll need to select your operating system. For Windows users, you may see two options: Windows x86 and Windows ARM. The x86 version is compatible with standard Intel and AMD processors, which covers the vast majority of desktop and laptop computers. The ARM version is designed for specific devices with ARM-based processors, typically found in certain tablets or specialized laptops. When in doubt, choose Windows x86. Next, you'll encounter a registration form. Blackmagic Design requires basic information before allowing the download. Complete all required fields accurately, then click Register and Download. The download will begin automatically. It's a large file and will definitely take some time. Take a long nap. Once the download completes, you'll have a compressed file that needs extraction. Right-click the downloaded file and select Extract All to access the installer. Double-click the extracted installer file to launch the setup process. The installer presents four installation options: DaVinci Resolve Control Panels, Blackmagic Raw Player, Fairlight Audio Accelerator Utility, and DaVinci Resolve itself. Unless you own specific Blackmagic hardware, you can safely uncheck the first three options. These additional components serve specialized functions and will only consume unnecessary disk space for most users. Keep only DaVinci Resolve selected and proceed with the installation. The setup wizard will guide you through the remaining steps: accept the license agreement, choose your installation directory, and begin the installation process. The entire procedure typically takes 1 to 2 minutes to complete. Once installation finishes, you'll have access to professional video editing software that includes advanced color correction, visual effects, motion graphics, and audio post-production capabilities. DaVinci Resolve is now ready for use. Well, here's the thing: DaVinci Resolve is actually designed around your entire video workflow, and those tabs represent each step of the process. Let's break this down. At the bottom, you'll see these pages that follow the natural order of video creation. First, we have Media. This is where you import all your footage and assets. Think of it as your digital filing cabinet, except hopefully more organized than your actual desk. Next up is Cut, which handles basic editing and simple cuts. Then there's Edit. This is your full editing interface, essentially DaVinci's answer to Adobe Premiere. Moving along, we have Fusion for motion graphics and animations, because apparently static text just isn't exciting enough anymore. The Color page is where DaVinci really flexes. This color grading tool is so robust that many professionals edit their entire project elsewhere, then bring it here just for color correction. It's basically the reason why your favorite YouTubers' videos look way better than your vacation footage. Fairlight handles all your audio needs, but I prefer another open source tool, Audacity. And finally, Deliver is where you export your finished masterpiece to share with the world, or at least your mom. Now, here's what you actually need to know. You'll spend most of your time in Cut and Edit. The other pages are powerful tools, but they're like having a Formula One car when you just need to get to the grocery store. Impressive, but may be overkill for most projects. The cut page gives you a streamlined interface with your media browser up left, preview window in the right, and timeline below. It's designed for efficiency. Switch to edit, and you get a more traditional layout with separate preview and source monitors. One for reviewing clips before you add them, and one for watching your timeline playback. Both pages have the same core elements, but edit gives you more control and flexibility when you need it. I will show you how to set the optimal project settings in DaVinci Resolve so you never regret it halfway through the project. When you first launch DaVinci Resolve, you'll encounter the Project Manager interface. This central hub displays all your previous projects stored locally, with additional options for network storage and Blackmagic Cloud access. To begin a new project, simply click the New Project button at the bottom of the screen. Choose a descriptive project name that clearly identifies your work. For this demonstration, I'll use Resolve Setup Tutorial. You can also change the location of media here. Click Create to proceed to the main workspace. The most crucial step that many users overlook is proper project configuration. Navigate to File, Project Settings, Master Settings, Timeline Format. Here you'll define the fundamental parameters for your entire project. Select your resolution from the drop-down menu, Full HD for standard projects or 4K for higher-end productions. This choice should align with your intended output format. Next, configure the frame rate to match your source footage. If your clips are shot at 24 frames per second, set your project timeline to 24. Mismatched frame rates can create significant issues during playback and export. For YouTube, the ideal frame rate depends on your content. 24 frames per second is perfect for a cinematic look in vlogs and short films, while 30 frames per second is a versatile standard for most videos, like tutorials and podcasts. If you're creating content with fast-paced action, such as gaming or sports, 60 frames per second is the best choice for a smooth, crisp viewing experience. I am going with 30 frames per second. Once you've established your optimal settings, save them as a custom preset for future projects. Click Save Current Settings as Preset, name it something descriptive like Standard Production Settings, and set it as your default. This ensures consistency across all new projects and eliminates repetitive configuration tasks. Now hit Save. To safeguard your work, enable automatic backup features through DaVinci Resolve Preferences. Then User, Project, Save and Load. Activate all available backup options to create automatic saves at regular intervals. This prevents data loss from unexpected software crashes or system failures. When you're ready to begin editing, create a new timeline through File, New Timeline. You can apply the preset we just configured or customize settings manually for specific project requirements. Click Create to generate your timeline and begin the editing process. Following this systematic setup approach establishes a professional foundation for your DaVinci Resolve projects. I'll show you the fastest ways to clean up your footage in DaVinci Resolve. First up, let's work on the cut page. This is DaVinci's simplified editing interface, perfect for when you just want to chop things up without overthinking it. Drag your clip down to the timeline and you'll see your video track on top with those beautiful audio waveforms below. Those squiggly lines aren't just decoration, they're actually showing you where your audio. Now here's where it gets fun. See that preview window up top? That's your entire video from start to finish. The timeline below is your zoomed-in workspace. You can scrub through by clicking and dragging, or if you're feeling fancy, use your mouse like some kind of editing wizard. Let's say you want to trim off that awkward beginning. Position your playhead where you actually want the video to start, select your clip, and hit Ctrl-B or Command-B on Mac. This blades your clip, splitting it in two. Select the unwanted section, hit Delete, and boom, problem solved. But wait, there's more. You can also hover your mouse over the edge of any clip until it turns red. Then click and drag to adjust the start or end point. It's like magic without a hat. Now let's jump over to the edit page, where things get a bit more sophisticated. Don't worry, your project stays exactly the same, you're just getting a different view with more detailed audio waveforms. Here's where the real power kicks in with something called ripple editing. Let's say you're scrubbing through and you find a section which you want to cut. You can blade at that point with Command-B. You can drag the clip where you want to. You can also use Ripple Edit to remove entire sections without leaving awkward gaps. To ripple edit left, which removes everything from your playhead backward to the previous cut. Use Command-Shift left bracket on Mac or Control-Shift left bracket on PC. For ripple edit right, just flip those brackets around. And there you have it. With these trimming techniques, you can turn your raw footage into something that looks good. Whether you're adding a webcam feed to your tutorials or incorporating branded graphics into your content, overlays are essential for modern video production. The good news is that DaVinci Resolve makes this process surprisingly straightforward once you know the right steps. First, we need to access Edit Mode. Navigate to the bottom of your screen and select the third tab from the left. This switches you from the media page to the Edit workspace where we'll do our overlay work. Now we'll add an image overlay to our timeline. Locate your image in the Media Pool panel, then drag it directly onto your main video track. The system will automatically place your image on the track above your base video, creating the foundation for your overlay effect. If you can't see Media Pool, you can turn it on in the upper menu. With your image selected, navigate to the Inspector panel on the right side of your screen. In the Transform section, you can modify the zoom value to scale your image proportionally or unlink the X and Y coordinates for custom dimensions. Simply click and drag the values left or right to resize in real time, giving you precise control over your overlay size. For positioning, use the position controls to move your image overlay anywhere on screen. Whether you need it in the top right corner for branding, bottom left for logos, or anywhere in between, just adjust those position values by clicking and dragging. Here's a professional tip for image overlays. Adjust the opacity to around 75 to 85%. This creates a more integrated look that appears intentional rather than simply placed on top of your footage. Now let's cover video overlays, which work similarly but with one crucial additional step. Drag your video clip from the media pool onto your main video track, just like we did with the image. The video will automatically go to the track above your base footage. If your video overlay appears with a black background, this is completely normal and easily fixable. Select your video overlay clip, then navigate to the Inspector panel. Find the Composite section and locate the Composite Mode dropdown, which should currently be set to normal. Change this setting to Add, and you'll see that black background disappear instantly, creating the transparent effect you're looking for. Just like with image overlays, you can adjust the size using the Transform section zoom controls and position your video overlay anywhere on screen using the position values. The same opacity recommendations apply here as well, with 75 to 85% typically providing the most professional appearance. That's how you add overlays in DaVinci Resolve. Sometimes you want to soften a cut or add a bit of motion so the edit feels smoother. Head to the Effects panel on the left and open Video Transitions. You'll see a whole bunch of options. If you hover over any of them, you'll get a quick preview, which helps you pick one without trial and error. One catch with transitions is they need a little extra footage at the end of the first clip and the start of the next. If you click a clip edge and it turns red, that means there's no extra media there. Use the Trim Edit tool to pull the ends in a bit so the two clips overlap. Once you've made that overlap, you can drag a transition like Cross Dissolve onto the cut and it will apply. You can also double-click a transition in the list and Resolve will add it to the nearest cut. To change how long the transition lasts, drag its edges on the timeline. Just remember you can only stretch it as far as the overlap allows. For finer control, select the transition and open the inspector. There you can change duration and sometimes swap styles or easing in and out. Try not to go wild with transitions, okay? Lots of wipes and flashy stuff quickly gets in the way of the message. Often a simple dissolve is enough. Dynamic zoom is an easy way to add motion without keyframing. Turn it on with a clip selected and it will either slowly zoom in or zoom out across the duration. Click the dynamic zoom label to flip the direction or tweak the behavior. It's subtle, but it makes static footage feel less static. Beyond transitions and zooms, there are a lot of other quick effects in the inspector. Speed change lets you slow things down, speed them up, reverse playback, or create a freeze frame for emphasis. Now let's open the effects section here. You will find cool overlay effects like binoculars, CCTV, colored border, and many more. In the Open FX section, explore creative looks like blurs, color, grain, and more. Hovering gives a preview so you can see what they do before applying. Some effects are only in Resolve Studio Mean paid version, but there are plenty of free ones that are useful. Use them to support the story, not to show off. Drag an effect onto a clip and then dial it back in the inspector. Transitions work with text too. Drag a transition onto the start or end of the title clip. That makes text come in and out more gracefully. This is one of those basics that feels small but makes a big difference. So I'll show everything from the simplest title to a few quick ways to animate and style your text. Follow along with your project open so you can test each step as I explain it. First, load your project and go into the edit page. That is the third icon at the bottom of the screen. You should see your timeline with the clips you're working on. The place where all the title effects live is the effects panel in the upper left corner. So click effects to open it. In that panel, you'll see a small box or arrow for the toolbox. Click to expand it and then click titles. That opens a list of all the built-in text types like basic text, lower thirds, and the Fusion style titles. To put text on your video, pick a title style you like and drag it onto the timeline where you want it to appear, placing it above the video track. Don't just double-click to preview a title because that only shows the look, it doesn't place it on the timeline. Once the title is on the timeline, you can trim its edges the same way you trim clips, so drag the ends to set how long the text stays on screen. Let's delete this overlay video. Editing the actual words is easy. Select the title clip on the timeline and either double-click it in the viewer or open the inspector panel on the upper right. In the inspector, you'll see a text box where you can type or paste your text. If you have a long sentence, you can use Ctrl+A or CMD+A to select all and replace it quickly. The inspector also shows font choices, size, spacing, alignment, and color, so you can tweak everything without leaving the edit page. If you want to move the text around the screen, use the position X and Y controls in the settings part of the inspector. Drag the sliders or type a number until it sits where you want. If something looks off, there's a small reset arrow next to almost every control in Resolve. Click that to return that setting to the default. That is a lifesaver when you accidentally push a value too far and want to go back. For basic animation like a slight zoom or fade, check the controls inside the inspector. You'll find options like dynamic zoom or simple ease in and out controls that add movement without opening Fusion. To animate properties like position, size, or opacity more precisely, use keyframes. Click the diamond icon next to the property, move the playhead, change the value, and Resolve interpolates between the points. This is how you make text slide in, grow, or fade away in a controlled way. If you want fancier animated titles, use the Fusion titles in the titles list. Fusion titles come with built-in effects like glitches, type-on animations, and layered elements. Drag a Fusion title onto the timeline the same way, then edit the sample text in the inspector. Some Fusion templates include more than one text field, so select each one in turn and change the words, fonts, or colors. If you need to go even deeper, right-click the title and open it in Fusion to edit the nodes, but you don't need Fusion to get very good animated text for most projects. A few practical tips will save time. If you like a title and want the same style again, duplicate the title clip by holding Alt, Option on Mac, and dragging it, or use copy and paste. Keep your fonts consistent across the project to look professional, and avoid tiny or overly decorative fonts where viewers must read quickly. Think about readability when you pick fonts and colors. High contrast between text and background makes a big difference, especially on phones. Finally, check timing and position by playing your timeline at full speed. Make sure the text appears long enough to read, and that any movement feels natural. If the text looks off after you export, remember you can always return to the project, tweak the inspector values, and re-export. That covers everything from basic titles to animated Fusion text and a few practical tips to make your text look clean and professional. Let's clear the timeline by deleting everything. Now let's look at where the sound library is. When you're on the edit page, you'll see Sound Library at the top. And the same goes for the Fairlight audio page. Click on it and you'll notice it looks empty at first. That's because the free sound effects are not yet installed. To get them, click on the small icon at the top of the left menu. If you start new, you'll see your local database listed. You can add as many databases, which I will show you later in the video. While a local database is selected, you'll notice an option to download the free DaVinci Resolve sound library. Clicking on that takes you to a page where you need to fill in some details. After filling it out, scroll down, agree to the terms, and click Register and Download. You'll get a zip file. Once downloaded, right-click it, extract it, and then install it. Just make sure to close DaVinci Resolve before running the installer. When the installation is done, reopen Resolve, go back to the sound library, and click the icon again. This time you'll see Fairlight Sound Library. First, it might look like there's nothing inside, but here's the trick. Type 3 stars, asterisk asterisk asterisk, in the search bar, and all the sound effects will appear. You'll even see the waveforms, which makes it easier to choose the right sound. You can preview them by clicking. Drag and drop any effect you like directly into your timeline. You can also search by keyword. For example, typing whoosh shows all whoosh effects, and typing door shows different types of door sounds. That's how you install and use the 500+ free sound effects. But what if you want to add your own? For this, you have to create a database. Click the Home button in the bottom right. Go to the Project Libraries tab. If it is not visible, click its Show or Hide button. Hit Add Project Library. Name it like My Sound Effects. Click Create. Select the folder you like. Now close it. Now you will find it in the Database dropdown. Now you have to add library in Database. For this, look for the option to add a library. If you don't see it right away, click the 3 dots in the corner, and you'll find Add Library. Choose the folder on your computer where your sound effects or music are stored, and select it. Resolve will scan the folder and link all those files to your library. When the scan is complete, you'll see a message confirming it. Again, you won't see anything until you type in the search bar. After that, all your sound effects will show up, and you can search them by keyword just like before. This way, instead of manually dragging files in every time, you have your own sound library built into Resolve, organized and ready to use. So now you know both methods: how to install the free Fairlight sound library that comes with DaVinci Resolve, and how to add your own sound effects and music to the library. Both are easy to set up and will save you a lot of time while editing. This video is a walkthrough of the Resolve color grading page. Just scratching the surface, nothing in depth. Because color grading tools in DaVinci are so professional, they need a separate, long video of their own. Let's open our edit in the color page by clicking on the color tab at the bottom. Before we dive into grading, I want to quickly walk you through the interface so you know where everything is. At the top, you have tabs like Clips, which lets you jump between shots, and Timeline, where you can select clips directly from your sequence. From the drop-down menu, what kind of clips do you want? In the center is your viewer, where you can play and pause the video as you work. On the right, you'll see the node area. Think of them as layers in Photoshop or Premiere Pro that hold your adjustments. On the bottom right, you'll see your scopes. These are visual graphs that show what's happening with your image. Parade Scope graph shows 3 basic colors separately. The Waveform Scope shows brightness. The bottom of the graph represents shadows. The top shows highlights, and the middle is your midtones. The idea is to keep your adjustments within these ranges, without crushing the blacks or blowing out the whites. The middle window at the bottom is of curves. You can adjust colors in real time using them. You can choose various types of curves: custom, hue versus hue, hue versus saturation, and few more. My advice is to play with them to learn before using them. Now, let's look at the main tools mostly used, which are the primary wheels. You'll see 4 of them: Lift, Gamma, Gain, and Offset. Lift controls the shadows, Gamma controls the midtones, and Gain adjusts the highlights. Offset moves the entire image brighter or darker. Here's how they work. If you move the Lift wheel, you'll notice the darker areas of your image shift while the rest stays mostly the same. Gain will push the highlights up or down, and Gamma lets you fine-tune the midtones. Use the scopes to check your adjustments so you're not clipping the top or bottom of the graph. Offset is a global adjustment, so it raises or lowers the entire exposure at once. You can also shift the color by dragging the wheel toward a specific tone, like blue for cooler shadows or red for warmer highlights. If you ever make a mistake, just hit the reset arrow to go back. Now let's go to nodes. Every change you make is stored inside a node. You can toggle a node off and on to see the before and after of your adjustments. If you want to separate changes, like adding saturation, you can create a new serial node by right-clicking and selecting Add Node. This way you can keep your work organized and reset one adjustment without losing the rest. You can rename nodes too so you remember what each one does. On top of the wheels, you'll find other controls like temperature, tint, and contrast. Temperature lets you warm or cool your image, while tint balances the greens and magentas. If you're struggling to set the right white balance, grab the eyedropper tool and click on something that should be white or black in your frame. The software will adjust it for you automatically. If you want to get into effects, open the effects panel at top right and drag something like a Gaussian blur into your node. You can fine-tune it in the inspector. You'll also see window button downs here which are actually mask. These let you isolate parts of your image so your adjustments only affect a certain area. Let's try circle. Now let's talk about a really useful trick. Once you've created a look you like, you don't need to repeat the process for every clip. Right-click in the viewer, choose Grab Still, and it will save your grade as a preset. You can then apply it to other clips by selecting the clip, right-clicking the preset, and applying grade. You can apply it individually or select multiple clips at once and apply it in bulk. From there, once you're done grading, it's a good idea to go back to the edit or cut page and watch your video through. This way you can make sure everything looks consistent from start to finish. That's the basics of the color page. There's a lot more you can do here, but with what we covered today, you already have the tools to start making your videos look much better. Whether you're working with 1080p or 4K footage, these settings will help you get the highest quality without making your files unnecessarily huge. Once you're done editing your video, head down to the bottom of Resolve and click on the little rocket icon. That takes you to the Deliver page. Now, before we dive into settings, set your in and out points. Move to the very start of your video, press I on your keyboard, then go to the end and press O. That tells Resolve exactly what part of your timeline to render. Otherwise, it will render the whole timeline. At the top left, you'll see some export presets. You can find a YouTube preset here too. It works fine, but I usually prefer setting things up manually. Select Custom Export. Give your video a name like a 4K render test, and choose where you want it saved. Make sure it's set to render as one single clip, and double-check that Export Video is enabled. For format, I go with MP4. For codec, I like H.264. Keep encoder auto. Switch the resolution to 3840 by 2160, which is 4K or whatever resolution you need to export. If you stay at 1080, Resolve will ask if you want to upscale during export, which actually looks pretty decent too. Either option works. You can also switch to vertical resolution for shorts, TikTok, or other social media content. Frame rate should match your project timeline, so don't change that. If you want, you can restrict quality bitrate, but mostly automatic works best. I recommend experimenting with it for a few renders. For this, change rate control to variable bitrate, then choose Restrict to, and then setting your bitrate. For 4K videos, I usually go between 70,000 and 80,000 kbps. If you're only working with 1080p, 40,000 is plenty. Now click on Advanced Settings. Keep pixel aspect ratio and data levels on default. For color space tag, I use Rec.709, and for gamma tag, Rec.709A. If you're on a Mac with a calibrated monitor, this setting is usually the best option. On Windows or with other setups, you may need to adjust, but Rec.709A works for most people. Make sure none of the extra checkboxes like Optimized Media, Proxy Media, or Cached Renders are enabled. You want your export to come straight from your original footage at the highest quality possible. If you're shooting in RAW, you can enable Force Debair to highest quality. Next, go to the Audio tab. Choose AAC codec and set it to constant bitrate. This is mostly default, but here's the important part. Open Audio Normalization menu, check Normalize Audio. Select YouTube, That setting balances your audio so it's optimized for uploads. And please do check audio after rendering, as sometimes depending on audio recording, it can ruin your audio too. So if it is not working for you, don't do it. Click the Add to Render Queue button. When exporting vertical videos, follow the same steps, set your in and out points, but make sure your out point is 1 frame before the very end. Otherwise, you risk ending up with a black frame which looks awkward in a loop. For format, I use MP4 again with H.264 as the codec. For bitrate, 30,000 kbps is a sweet spot. It keeps the video sharp without creating files that are too large for social apps to handle. Once you've dialed in these settings, add your project to the render queue and hit render all. That's it, you're done. If you'd like to save time, you can even create presets. After setting everything up once, click on the 3-dot menu in the top right of the Deliver page, save it as a new preset, and give it a clear name. Next time, you'll just pick your preset and skip all the manual adjustments. And here's one more tip. Always upload to YouTube in 4K, even if your footage was originally 1080. YouTube gives 4K videos higher bit rates, so the playback quality will look better than if you had uploaded in HD.
If you find this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Also, comment. What problem do you want me to solve in the next video? Take care and bye.